Happy Hump Day to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to today's European Outlook. It is the 15th of January, midpoint of meteorological winter. And we start off today with some of the mildest conditions across northern Scotland anywhere in the European continent. We had 13, 14 Celsius quite widely, thanks to strong southwesterly winds importing that mild conditions, especially across western and northern areas of the UK throughout the course of this week after what was a particularly cold first half to January. It probably was the coldest start to January since 2010. And it's all thanks to an area of high pressure that they initially started off to the northwest of the UK, ushering in snow showers, northerly winds. That high then slipped across the top of Scotland, sealed in the cold air. We've seen some particularly cold days and nights, -18.9 at Altnahara. Then, as that high continued to slip southwards, we've seen the winds on the rear and the back side of the low move in from the southwest. So it delivered cold northerlies and then ushered in mild southwesterlies, and we've seen temperatures respond very dramatically indeed. 30 to 35 Celsius warmer over the last 5 days. We've seen that rise in temperatures, particularly across the Altnahara and northern areas of Scotland. But this is the first half of January according to CDAS, so you can see here below average UK, Ireland, the majority of Europe, with the exceptions of Norway, Sweden, and Finland, has seen a warmer than average January so far, it has to be said. But we do have some, as that high continues to drift into the near continent, we're seeing colder and colder air getting driven in from an east to northeasterly direction. We've seen some particularly cold temperatures this morning over Iberia. At the same time, we've seen temperatures of plus 14 on the Murray Coast and Northwest Highlands. This is the upcoming 7 day period according to the GFS extended. So we've got warmer than average. Look at Northern Europe. Quite a dramatic contrast here compared to France and Iberia, for example. And I'll talk about France in just a second. Interesting stats coming out of here. So this is the GFS extended. This is how the ECM is looking for the upcoming 7 days as well. So it's very similar story. And you notice we don't have a particularly cold signal showing. Now, there has been a lot of rumblings in recent days with regards to Scandi blocks. I've had private messages. I've had people hit me with this idea of the models, and rightly so. The models have been showing some cold easterlies, but I've hesitated at talking much about that, and the reasons why is because the modeling is going to flex back and forward with that scenario. A lot of it hinges on the amplification of the pattern starting off in North America, bitterly cold Arctic air. I've emphasized this point for a couple of days now on this channel about how we're going to see intrusions of the tropospheric polar vortex is going to descend into eastern North America. In fact, the majority of North America is going to see bitterly cold conditions getting driven southwards. That then forces a stronger jet across the Atlantic, and then in turn, it depends on how amplified the pattern is. Can we see the high that's currently positioned over Central Europe lift up towards Scandinavia? Then it would see the winds return from the east into western areas of Europe, including the UK and Ireland, but it is very marginal at this case. What we have is we've got a bit of a clash of cold zonal winds off the Atlantic coming in next week, and we've got the possibility of something easterly coming in off the continent. So it's Atlantic westerlies versus continental easterlies is going to be the battle. But unfortunately, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty with regards to how far north that high can go, whether we can actually open the door to easterlies coming in from eastern areas of Europe. There's no question that the continent has been cooling down. This is how it was looking this morning. So at 20 to 7 this morning UTC, some of the mildest conditions anywhere in the continent across northern UK. Look at France, look at Spain and Portugal. We're seeing some particularly cold temperatures, even down the Faro on the Algarve coast of Portugal, for example, down to 8 Celsius this morning, while we had 13, 14 on the Murray coast. So quite an unusual upside down temperature profile between South Portugal and northern Scotland. But actually, enough continent, as can be seen here. This was an up close view of the contrast between northern UK and Iberia, for example, double digits below freezing in the high elevations of Spain and possibly Portugal. We had some below freezing temperatures. In fact, it looks as if we had a zero on the west coast of Portugal and the Atlantic coast, which is quite interesting to see. This is how temperatures unfolded through the past couple of days. So we obviously seen the bitterly cold conditions descend southwards over the UK through the course of the weekend, and then we've seen the coldest temperatures residing across the bulk of England and Wales down into the southeast, while we've seen temperatures recover very dramatically across the north just simply because of southwesterly winds. We had the winds blowing over the higher topography of western and northern UK. We've seen the Föhn effect, we've seen downslope compressional warming take place, and as a consequence of that, we are seeing some significant records breaking across northern areas of Europe. This is off coolweather.com, and you can see here all these little oranges and red dots represent record temperatures. So anywhere from Kinloss and Kirkwall, 12 Celsius in Kirkwall at this time of the year is pretty warm. We've got also temperatures as high as 9 Celsius on this island. I don't know exactly whether that's the Faroes or not, but 9 Celsius at this latitude is pretty dramatic stuff. Even on the west coast of Iceland, for example, Reykjavik, 7 Celsius. Remember, we had double figures below freezing here not that long ago, and even down on the south coast, we had 7 Celsius. But then even up towards the Arctic region of Europe, into northern Norway, plus 7 Celsius. At this time of the year, midpoint of winter, north of the Arctic Circle. Pretty remarkable stuff, actually, when you think about that. So, yeah, this is the temperatures that we've seen through the course of yesterday, late last night, and overnight. Temperatures rising. Sorry, even at 10 to 5 this morning, 14 Celsius at Altnahar. Remember, minus 18.9 early Saturday morning with a maximum of -9 on both Friday and Saturday. So it really doesn't get much more dramatic in terms of a rise in temperature. Further south across even the Republic of Ireland, we're seeing temperatures in the mid-single figures, which is no great shakes really for this time of the year. You would expect to see lower temperatures, but while you've got the plus 12 Celsius in the Antrim coast up to the northwest around Mallinhead, Donegal, for example, while we've got the 5 Celsius across central parts of Ireland, and then further south we've got the mid to low single figures. This is the current temperatures, so anywhere from plus 10 to plus 13. Obviously the sun has now set. The time is now 20 to 6 in the evening, and the sea plus 13 Celsius at Altnahar at this time of the evening is pretty darn warm. Or I'll say the word mild rather than warm because that might upset some people. You can see here we've got even in the south shore of Wales, we've got it's actually showing 4 Celsius on the map, but it's actually showing a temperature of plus 7, which is interesting actually. So we've got the kind of some single figures across the bulk of England and Wales, low teens across the north, and then if we look at Europe as a whole, you can see here that we've got the very, very mild conditions, plus 8 Celsius, way up, well to the north of Norway, and then you're only clinging on to kind of around the freezing mark, all the way up towards the very north shore of Norway, which is pretty much the most northerly point in mainland Europe, really. So quite interesting stuff. Now, I mentioned France. It looks as if France, not the night just gone, but the previous night was the coldest for France as a nation for nighttime temperatures since February 2018. So from the beast from the east back in February 2018 at the very end of the month, the night just gone, previous night should I say, was the coldest nationwide since late February 2018. So quite impressive actually. Quite an impressive achievement for France. And like I say, the cold air is continuing to drive south. Remember, I also mentioned about the increase in storminess over the next week or so. Look at this here. This is obviously raw model data. It's the GFS. It's the overview precipitation, cloud temperature, and pressure, and it's got a 929 millibar low sitting over Western Ireland. So I've given you the evidence, I've given you the background as to why I think we've got some potentially very deep areas of low pressure moving in. It has a bit of a 2013, 2014 flavour to it. Arctic air, the type of polar vortex that we've got, Arctic air getting driven into North America, phase 2 and 3 of the MJO becoming amplified in those phases, screams out stormy weather for Western Europe. We've got the contrast between bitterly cold air to the north, mild subtropical air to the south, strengthening jet, and a south displaced jet, meaning that we could have not a particularly mild flow from the west, a kind of cold zonal flow is possible with a more south displaced jet. And the reasons why I say that is because remember how cold the air mass is expected to be moving south over North America. That then gets whipped into the jet flow and then crosses the Atlantic. Yes, it moderates as it crosses the Atlantic, but it could be that we see some snowy episodes coming in off the Atlantic next week. And the latest run of the GFS indicates that very nicely. So let's go back to the year now. High pressure centered over the near continent. We've got the areas of low pressure and troughiness over the North Atlantic. Therefore, we've got southwesterly winds and mild conditions as a result of that. Underneath that high, we've got colder air in place, and that's hence why we've seen France's coldest night since 2018 underneath that area of high pressure. And this is the 850 temperatures of the GFS. So we've got even plus 10 Celsius at 850 on the Aberdeenshire coast of Scotland here. But it's the effect of the firn that the southwesterly winds blowing over mountains and descending on the other side is allowing these temperatures to warm up. We're starting to very slightly relax that air mass over the southwest of Europe here, as you can see, but it's still allowing that kind of southwesterly drift of the cold air underneath this area of high pressure. Continue to play through this loop here. Continue to see this southwesterly flow, keeping things mild now. Keeping in mind that Scandi solution, that Scandinavian high, it depends again, like I say, the amplitude of the pattern. North America versus Europe here. It depends on how much of a ripple is created in the jet stream, whether that area of high pressure can get lifted up into Scandinavia or not. That's going to be the big question. But we continue to play through this loop here. See the plus 10 Celsius at 850, now drifting into southern portions of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Now, listen, I'm not dismissing the idea of a Scandi block and a bit of an easterly flow developing here, but my thinking is that we're going to have this battle. High pressure trying to drift up towards Scandinavia, driving an easterly flow on the base of that high. Then we've got obviously a strengthening jet over the Atlantic. So we've got basically winds coming in from opposing directions here. What wins out? My thinking would be that probably the Atlantic flow wins out, but it's not necessarily a mild flow, especially if you've got the jet further south. If you have it further north, it's a different story. We're in the warm side of the jet. But you can see here quite a messy look to the overall pattern. This is Wednesday of next week. We've got quite a messy picture, but you notice here at the very, very edge of the chart here on the left-hand side, over eastern Canada, we've got a ton of very cold air getting driven off North America, out over the Atlantic here, and with milder air in the subtropics, we've got that strengthening the jet stream. Look at this here, look at this collision, the squeeze, the tightness of the gradient here in the temperature profile at 850 here. We've got the minus 20 Celsius at 850 versus plus 10 Celsius at 850. Very, very close together. That then indicates that we've got a breeding ground for rapid cyclogenesis here. And if you notice, as we play through this loop, there's an area of low pressure developing right on the tail, right on the nose of that strong jet, that big demarcation zone between warm and cold. That area of low pressure, that's that 929 millibar low, by the way, seen by the model, drifting into the UK. And look, the position is key. Further south, colder to the north, we could see some snow. Further south, it's milder across Iberia and across France. But this is one model run, folks. And I've had the problem that I've had, and I've without sounding nasty, I've had to ignore some comments because people are saying, what do you think of the latest run of the GFS? What do you think of the latest run of this? To be honest with you, I don't get bogged down by individual model runs. I'm looking at the trends, I'm looking at the ensembles. I'm also taking into account my overall theory behind the type of pattern. I make a call long before the models show it, and it looks as if it's got merit here. Look at this here. By the time we reach Monday, 27th of January here, long way out, but your phase 2 and the 3, your bitterly cold Arctic air driven south into North America, the type of polar vortex and the coupling we've got at the moment all comes together. Again, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen, but the models are now starting to show this, and that's very, very interesting to see. Looking at the overview chart here, skip back. Let's go back to the here now again. Play through the loop. Southwesterly winds, high pressure, delivering the chilly, not bitterly cold, but chillier over the central portions of Europe. Southwesterly flow continues to extend into Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We've got abnormally mild conditions here. Then, as we continue to play through, you can start to see areas of low pressure spinning away over the North Atlantic. We've got the high over the continent here. We're still in that general flow that is mild across, particularly the western fringes of that high, between the trough over the Atlantic and the high over Europe. The UK is stuck in that southwesterly flow in between the two systems. But then, as you continue to play through this loop, there's the areas of low pressure starting to spin away. You can see the kind of bit of a split going on here. Got a branch of high pressure going up towards Iceland and eastern portions of Greenland here. We've got an area of low pressure that drifts down towards Iberia here. UK stuck in a bit of a no man's land. So there's still a lot of complicating factors, but I think once we start to see the Arctic air getting driven into eastern North America, then it fires up the jet, and then everything starts to come together. We certainly have got on the cards 2 or 3 named storms during the second half of January, and then you look at this here. We've got the jet loading up, deep areas of low pressure as a consequence, and we need to pay attention to this pattern very, very carefully indeed. We could be in for quite a stormy situation as we go through the final 10 days of January here. So, but it's all to play for. Interesting things coming up. Let's have a look at the ECM model here and see if it's buying into the GFS solution, or is it going to show the opposite. In fact, look at this here. Quite a different look. And this is the problem that we have with regards to the models as well. There is one model saying one thing, there's another model saying another thing. Play through this loop. You can see here there's that area of high pressure building over the continent, areas of low pressure. We've got these splits. We've got the high pressure starting to kind of force lows going one way and another way. You can see here that as we continue to play through this, we are seeing a slightly different look to the model here with regards to the GFS indicating much more loaded, Atlantic driven areas of low pressure moving, sweeping into the UK and Ireland. The ECM model is the complete opposite to essentially to what it was showing a day or two ago, and the GFS model was actually indicating now what the ECMWF model is showing, plus 10-50 millibars, close to that anyway, over portions of northern portions of Europe. Look at the 850s, and you can see here that this is very, very interesting stuff indeed. So you can play through this loop, but again, you notice here that we're starting to see the split, the cut off here with that flow coming in from the east. It's not bodily moving in -10, -15 Celsius at 850, drifting underneath the base of the high. That's at 10-50 millibars over southern Sweden. The cold air getting driven towards the UK. It is so complex and so difficult to say, but we've got 2 extreme runs of the model. GFS indicating 929 millibar low into the UK. The ECMWF is showing a 1050 millibar high over Scandinavia, with a hint or a flirt with something bitterly cold coming underneath it here. So stay tuned, like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you next time with more. Bye for now.